Good evening, welcome to another episode of View from the Gallowgate. I'm Ian Smith, a Newcastle United season ticket holder in the Gallowgate end, and today on the show we'll be recapping two fantastic performances and results for Newcastle over the past few days. The 1-0 victory over Man City in the Carabao Cup, and of course the mind-blowing 8-0 demolition of Sheffield United on Sunday afternoon. And later in the show we'll also be looking at our nice and nasty surprises we've seen so far for Newcastle this season. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts, and share it to other Newcastle fans so we can grow the show. Thank you. As ever, I'm with other people. I'm joined by my dad, Gordon. Evening, Gordon.
Good evening.
Evening, Dad. How was your holiday?
It was fantastic. It was really good. Excellent. Really good.
Excellent. And I'm also joined all the way from Australia by Dexter. Evening, Dexter. Good good morning, should I say, to you, as it is over there right now.
Good day, lads.
How are you doing? All right.
Yeah, good. Thanks. Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
So
we're wide awake.
I've been a bit worried about.
Oh, you're on mute, Ian.
Sorry, my microphone just unplugged a little bit there. Yeah, I've been a little bit worried about you, Dexter, because a lot of our kickoff times have been pretty unsociable for you.
Yeah,
You've had a bit of a raw deal in Australia.
I've got to be honest. I haven't been getting up for all of them. So watch the AC Milan game, but the Sheffield United game, I kind of decided to just not watch it live, and kind of get up at 6 a.m. and. Watch it without knowing what the result was, so it was still a nice surprise.
Fair enough.
I would be.
I've got massive respect for getting up in the middle of the night to watch matches. It's just I couldn't do it.
Yeah, I did them all last season, but I've got to be honest, like the lack of sleep was killing me.
Isn't it?
Yeah.
Anyway, it's been a fantastic week for Newcastle, obviously. I mean, starting way back, it feels like a lifetime ago, really. The 0-0 draw in the San Siro just over a week ago, followed by the 8-0 thrashing of Sheffield United, and then wrapped up with the League Cup third-round victory over Manchester City, which was a game I guess we all hoped we might win, and we felt we had a chance of winning, and then we did actually do the business. So a terrific result, and in particular... A really good second half performance, Dad.
Yeah, it was very, very good, and the first half was very pretty from Man City. They had a lot of possession, and you realise how good a side they are. I mean, their second string players can pass and move equally as well as a lot of their first team, what you would call them, their first 11, but they'd still lacked a cutting edge without Haaland. I mean, they didn't really create a lot of chances at all for all the possession they had. In fact, we actually had the best chance of the half when Jacob Murphy was played through by Isak.
Yeah, and to be perfectly honest with you, I was laughing when we were through on goal because I was like, he's going to score. Obviously, he didn't score. But I was like, it would have been at that point of the game, it would have been a bit of a robbery. To have been 1-0 up, wouldn't it?
That's right. And I think, the side that Eddie Howe put out was a bit of a surprise because, I thought he would play the two young the two young fullbacks, Livermendo and Hall, as fullbacks. Yeah. But of course, he didn't do that with Hall. He played him sort of wide left. And then he brought in Lewis Smiley, which I didn't think he would do that, even against Man City. And to be fair, Miley's obviously got ability. But ultimately, he's still a 17-year-old, and at times he was gasping for air. He found the pace of the game. Yeah. But I think it'll do him a world of good. Better to play a Man City team like that than being thrown in against, a second or third division team where you might have around thinking,
let's be honest. Like we say, Man City had their second string out, as did we. But Man City's second string still had. They still played Grealish. They still had Alvarez playing up front. It wasn't a bad team.
No, and that's right. And I think at half time they thought they had all the possession, and they probably were disappointed they weren't ahead. But then Eddie Howe changed it at half time, as we know, bringing on Bruno and Anthony Gordon. And then immediately from the beginning of the second half, the atmosphere ratcheted up, and the whole thing was just Anthony Gordon and Bruno inspired, and we just became the Newcastle that we know we can be, and that intensity and that pressing and that work rate. And honestly, for 20 minutes, Man City didn't know what had hit them. They couldn't cope with that intensity around them, and we scored one goal in that period. Yeah. And then after that, it would be fair to say we were hanging on, but I don't think we were. Actually, I thought we were comfortable.
I never felt like we were hanging on. I didn't feel particularly worried once we went 1-0 up.
I think they had one shot very late on, which went just
very close
from the Gallowgate end. It looked as though it could have been going in, but obviously it didn't. But no,
to be honest,
I mean, the performances of Dummett and the Sells at centre half, I mean, they were both excellent. I thought, overall the back four played really well, and of course, the man of the match and the outstanding was Tino Livramento. He was brilliant. Excellent.
Dexter, I don't know how much you managed to see of the game, and I think the League Cup games are maybe a little bit trickier to catch over there. But have you managed to catch up on any of the highlights?
Just the highlights, lads. The 10 minutes highlights on the NUFC TV channel. But I've got to say, I was like, watched the kind of feed, good old days, the feed updating, and was on the edge of my seat because you're just not expecting a 1-0 win against Man City, right? It's the kind of the Newcastle of old is still there. Can't help but think the worst when you're just reading the feed and seeing the kind of possession and the kind of the key moments of the match on the Sky Sports ticker feed.
I think it shows just how far we have come so far, because although, we obviously played Lascelles and Dummett, which is mad, really, when you consider we won a game with those two against Man City. But in all seriousness, they did both play well. But the team we put out, despite clearly being a lot of changes, 10 changes from the Sheffield game, was still decent. It was still a decent team, and that just shows the journey we're on as a football club is completely heading in the right direction.
And I think one of the big factors of that last night was Joe Linton being back. I mean, his presence in that midfield was huge. If we hadn't had him, I wonder what he would have done. But his physical presence, and he had a really good game, both first and second half. And I think that helped the younger lads around him in midfield. And really, that was a big plus for us last night, him being back.
It was a real surprise as well, I think. I was not expecting to see Joe Linton starting a match and then obviously having a really good game as well. So it was a really pleasant surprise to see that. But loads of standout performances. Like you say, Livramento, man of the match, he was absolutely brilliant. I mean, you talk about Kieran Trippier being however old he is now. Is he 33, 32?
33,
yeah. He's not got long left, really, at the elite level, has he, Trippier, despite the fact we all want him to. He might have 2, possibly 3 years max. That kid is going to be... the replacement's there, ready and waiting, which is amazing to see. So it'd be really interesting to see how much game time he gets between, the rest of the season, basically.
Yeah, there was a little clip actually somebody put up, and I sent it to you, Ian, but I don't know if you've seen it, Dexter, but it's a little compilation of Livramento's performance last night, which is quite worth seeing. And it did sum him up. He had Grealish up against him in that first half, and really he handled them really, really well. And some of his captain, but also his forward play as well. He's definitely going to be a player. How old is he? Is he 19 or 20? I can't remember.
21, I think.
He's 21.
Yeah.
Well, he's still a young lad, isn't he? And it was a special night for him. I thought he was outstanding, and it'll be interesting to see how the rotation thing goes over the next few months, won't it? Because, like you say, I don't think Trippier will play every single game. But having that fallback is going to be something that we'll enjoy, I think.
Yeah, well, it'll be very interesting to see if Livramento starts in the next round. I mean, obviously the cup draw was almost immediately after full time. Manchester United away, Dexter. How are you feeling about that one?
Bring it on, I say. It's I think they're there for the taking.
Do you know what I said? I mean, I heard it in the cars. I was driving back from the game, and I thought, you're joking, aren't you? But I think I would rather we're playing the top teams, because I think on our learning curve of experience and sort of development, I think actually playing the better side is better for our younger players that he brings in and rotates. And that was like last night. I think they'll have learned from playing that team last night.
Totally.
And going to Old Trafford
will
hold no fears, because they're not as good as Man City. And I think the learning curve is good. And I'd rather we were doing that than playing second or third division teams where you're on a hiding to nothing and you get very physical teams playing down there. And look what happened last year with Tranmere. I mean, they kicked us and we suffered a couple of injuries from that game. So I'm quite happy. I'm like with you. Bring it on.
I definitely feel like that. I think we always seem to go to Old Trafford at the wrong time, or quite often we go to Old Trafford at the wrong time. This time, but as long as Ten Hag doesn't get sacked before the end of October, it feels like they're a club who are just not quite at the races at the moment for various reasons. And I do think I think there's nothing to fear. There's nothing to fear going there. It won't be an easy game because they're still, despite everything, they are still a decent team. But obviously, a lot will come down to team selection, what type of team Man United put out, what type of team we're able to put out. Because again, this is going to come in the middle of Champions League fixtures and Premier League fixtures and all that sort of thing. So there'll be a bit of a balancing act. But again, we've seen last night, we have, as long as we play the right amount of kind of starters, if you like. I mean, there was a big difference when Gordon and Bruno came on. There's no doubt about that. If we play the right balance of team, of youngsters and first teamers, there's no reason we can't go there and win.
Yeah, and I agree with Gordon. I think I said on the last time I was on, for me this season is not a write-off, but I think it's exactly what Gordon said, right? It's a steep learning curve. We've been on this kind of upward trajectory. We'll have to expect some kind of bumps that we've already had along the way. But I think the biggest, I think this Man City result's the biggest result of our season so far. And why I say that is, I think psychologically, the kind of talk even from fans was, we kept a clean sheet because Longstaff's in the side, and we've started winning because Longstaff's in the side. And man, I was concerned, right? Because if we're relying on Longstaff for us to be able to compete, what does that say about us as a squad and a team, right? And I think what this result's shown us is that actually, you've got players like Lascelles and Dummett who would probably written off, who can come in and do a job. And, what we've not seen with Lascelles, we've not seen with Dummett, is how they've responded to Howe's coaching, because, there's been such a solid back line. And I think, you can see with Dan Burn as well, right? Like he is droppable, right? Like Botman is droppable, Shea is droppable, right? We've got players that now are pushing and saying, hey, your place isn't guaranteed in the side now.
Yeah. Did anyone see Dummett's interview after the game?
Yeah, it was really emotional, wasn't it?
It was very emotional.
I haven't seen it.
Yeah, it's well worth looking out for. Yeah. I felt like he was almost holding back the tears, just talking about the fact that it's been really hard for him since the takeover, essentially. He didn't say that, but that's what he was alluding to. Very few opportunities. He basically hasn't played since the Tranmere game last season. Hasn't had a start since then. So I think just having the ability, the opportunity, to go out and play in front of a full St James's Park, beat Manchester City, I think it just meant so much to him.
Yeah.
That could have Sorry, I was just going to say that could have backfired as well, right? When you've got players who haven't played for 12 months and you throw them into the fire like that, you could get against Man City. We could have got humped 5-0, right? And then everybody's like, oh well, you just can't rely on those players. So I think it's one that Eddie Howe's got to get that balance right. And I think that's his learning curve this season, is how do I win games without relying on kind of players that have been my kind of stalwarts like Dan Burn and Longstaff and those types of players. And how do I kind of rotate? Because as you said, Gordon, there are players that are essential, like Joe Linton, like Bruno, like Gordon, that it's really hard. They're kind of potential to be world class players.
Yeah.
I
think any time when you see a team with 10 changes, you fear for them really, because I always think a lot of players get thrown into it, and then the argument comes, they get beat, and this is true of all clubs. I'm not just talking about Newcastle. That they never did themselves justice, they never did this. But it's very difficult for 10 players to come together and suddenly become a team in the true sense of the word. So I do feel sorry for a lot of players around the country when they're thrown into these Carabao Cup games, and then the pundits sit on the sideline saying, "Well, he didn't do very well there, did he?" Well, quite often they don't, because they haven't played together. How can you expect them to have the understanding and everything else? So I was pleased last night that not only did we change our starting lineup the way we did, and I was surprised that it was as many changes, but the fact that we actually looked still like a team. I think that's
I was about to say that actually. I think it points to the fact that with it, and you mentioned the training there with Eddie Howe's methods and stuff. It clearly shows that the whole squad, even the ones we're not seeing regularly, are trained to within an inch of their life with this style of play, and they're all on the same page with it. They're all trained, whether they're in the first team or not in the first team. They're all trained to understand this system and formations and all these other stuff that they have to be on top of. Clearly, like you said, the fact that the Cells done it, even Target could come in and all play a really solid game, better than solid game, to be fair to them. I
apologise to Target because I didn't mention him there, but he was excellent as well. I mean, the whole back four. And
very, very pleasing.
I don't know if you heard, I know you did, Ian, because you mentioned it in your newsletter, about Dan Burns' interview on the Monday Night Club on 5 Live. And he was talking about, when players come, they find it hard to just fit in straight away because they've got to get used to the methods and the patterns and the way that Eddie Howe wants them to play. And we've seen it, haven't we, when players come to the club? Eddie Howe doesn't normally throw them in straight away. And all this noise around Tonali.
I'm glad you mentioned that, because actually it's a really good point, and actually it's something that I kind of wanted to say is exactly what you're getting at there, Dad. The point that I made in my newsletter about Gordon was the fact that it took 6 months for him. He knew that he wasn't where he wanted to be, but he went and worked very, very hard, and now he's looking like an absolutely amazing player. We've got to give Tonali, I know there's plenty of Newcastle supporters who aren't on his back, but there's definitely an element of our fan base who are absolutely seemingly wanting to write him off already. It's you've got to give him time to adjust, and he's got the language barrier and the new country and the new league as well to deal with. There's loads of elements.
And the thing is, our fixture list, we've had 8 competitive games this season, and of those 8 games, you can honestly, you think of the weaker games. Sheffield United clearly has won, but Brentford maybe, but the rest have been really Villa, who are destined to be up there, Man City, Liverpool, Milan, and it's just gone on and on. And so we've played, our 8 games have been more competitive against top teams than any other side in our league, without a doubt.
Yeah, without a doubt.
And for Tonali, as you're saying, he's come from Italy as a foreign land. He's come to this country. He's got to learn the language. He's got to learn the system. He's got to just get used to the Premier League, because it is different to playing in the Italian leagues. So it's a huge learning curve, and he's 8 games in, and yet people are saying no, he's not good enough, and not. It's nonsense. The lad is a talented footballer, and he looks class. His time will come, and he will evolve into the player we want him to be at our club. I've no doubt about that.
Yeah, you said earlier in the show, Gordon, that the second half of the Man City game was the Newcastle of old. And I think what's been really clear this season, from what I've been seeing, is that Eddie Howe's trying to change the way that we play. We're not as intense, and I can understand why, because I just don't think you can go through a season playing that level of intensity that you had in the second half at Man City. And I think you've kind of seen other players, not just Tonali, but other players in the team kind of struggle to get around that system as well. So yeah, look, I mean, I just, you seen with Tonali in the first 5 minutes of his debut, right? He's going to be a world-class player. He's just got everything, his touch, his vision, everything.
I think one of the things I see with Tonali, and I think the players around him got to see this, he's won for the first time pass. When he gets the ball, he's moving it before the defenders have realised it. But the trouble is, some of the players he's passing to haven't quite realised he's going to pass it first time. So
that will come with time, the understanding, won't it?
Of course it will.
Let's quickly chat about the Sheffield United game as well. I know lots have been said about it and talked about, but it's obviously worth mentioning. An 8-0, a record equaling Premier League score for Newcastle United. Our biggest away win in the Premier League. Obviously, other records exist before the Premier League, but it's very, very significant. It was very pleasing to watch, and it really did feel like it felt like a massive statement to me, because our result against Milan, whilst Newcastle and its supporters were very happy with the result, there has been a trend to kind of try and belittle that result a bit, I think, from other fans, some elements of the media as well. And I just think we went out there and said, yeah, it's all right, we can travel to Milan midweek and we can come and absolutely paste the team. Like, obviously Sheffield were not good, but you don't win 8-0 by luck. There's a lot more to it than that. And yeah, just to have 8 different scorers, and it was just it was crazy, really. But again, we talked about Gordon coming off the bench last night against Man City. The game changed when Harvey Barnes got injured and Gordon came on. He was just sensational from there.
So did you watched it in Dexter in full? Did you see the ball?
Yeah. So I'd kind of predicted a 1-1 draw. I was pretty dubious going into it. Thought Champions League hangover. Sheffield United had actually, up to that point, had been pretty tight, right? Like they held Spurs and City and almost got results in both and just conceded late goals. Then I'd seen the Brentford getting humped 3-1 by Everton. And and then the AC Milan game where we're really fortunate to get a 0-0 draw. It was quite scary to watch. So then the first 20 minutes I was like, this is we're going to be lucky to get a 1-1 draw here. And then, as you said, Gordon came on. And I've got to be honest, it was just a bizarre game to watch from that point. It was like playing sensible soccer or FIFA or something on the lowest level. It was just like strolling straight through them.
It was a joke at times, wasn't it? Honestly, some of their defending was
the first 10 minutes. I was watching it the first 10 minutes and I'm thinking, we'll look a bit lightweight in this movie. We could have done with Joe Linton in there. And I'm thinking, would have been good had he been there, because that physical side, and we need. And then they had those couple of efforts. Now, they keep saying they're really good chances, but actually the one that the lad sliced at the far post, I don't think he would have scored.
I agree, Dad. I think there were half chances.
Yeah.
It was worrying because they did manage to get the ball across our right-hand side twice in the first 10 minutes. But
that's right.
The chances were half chances, in my opinion.
Yeah. And like you, Dexter, I looked at the results that Sheffield United had, and I thought it would be a tight game. I predicted we would win 2-1, and I thought it would be a tight game, hard game, and we would come out victors. And then, when Gordon came on, he did change the game. It was really amazing. And what was great was, of course, Trippier's deliveries on the goals. It was just phenomenal.
Scoring some set pieces.
Set pieces,
talking about that for 2 years.
Yeah.
And that
trying to
Dan
score
Burn
more set
one,
pieces.
I mean, I was so delighted for Dan Burn that one he scored, and one he managed to keep his shirt because the defender sort of had it off his back as he was being pulled. But the amount of nonsense I was reading on Saturday about, I wouldn't play Dan Burn. We should have Livramento in. We should have Hall in. What's the point in buying these defenders in the summer if we're not going to play them? There was no way he wasn't going to play the same defence. We've had 2 clean sheets, one in Milan and one against Brentford. Eddie Howe was always going to have that league game as a more important game than the Carabao Cup. Whatever happened last night. So the defence was there, and Dan Burn really shut a lot of people up. One, because he didn't have to play that well defensively, but he still won a lot of headers, which is what I said he would be in for, because they would be physical, they would put the ball high. But secondly, he scored a really good, well-worked free kick. And it was just great to see. And then Botman's goal, that was a really clever header. And it was a lovely goal. And it was just, then after that, we could just relax, couldn't we? So, it was a mad afternoon. And then the second half was just, I mean, there was so many gaps in that middle of their defence. It was untrue. I've never quite seen. I mean, Miggy's goal.
That was embarrassing.
Bruno gets the ball, and then he runs around Bruno. And then,
I'm sorry, but no Premier League defence should ever be conceding a goal like that to Almiron or any player. Like the pass through was ridiculous. There was 2 defenders who could have just easily shut it off, and neither of them did. And he just waltzed through, and I mean, it was a good finish by Miggy, but like it was far too easy. I mean.
And then it was quite funny listening to Callum Wilson after the game, because he was really knocked that he didn't score a hat-trick, because he had 3 goals, and he was desperate to get that goal. And then I don't know if you heard on NUFC coverage, but John Anderson, when Shaw got the ball, was shouting, hit it! And then he passes it.
Absolutely lovely pass out to Trippier, wasn't it?
Yeah.
Oh man! It was just a superb cross and a lovely. I mean, he just had to get it on target, didn't he? Callum Wilson, he wasn't going to miss it. But it was John Anderson's hit it. I was in stitches.
It's funny.
I was going to say on your point, Ian, as well, about the set pieces. Like, you asked me what I thought of the game. I actually think that last season we played a hell of a lot better and drew games 0-0. And I think the difference with this result was getting those set piece goals, right? We've talked a lot about how we get this low block and we just can't break teams down. And all the talk's been we should have signed Maddison. But I don't know what Maddison's going to do when you got like 20 players in an 18-yard box, right? Exactly. You can't slot passes through or play anything through there, and you have to make your set piece chances result in goals. So that for me was the biggest positive out of the Sheffield game, and it kind of showed, hey, look, if we start to utilize Burn and Botman properly, that's the best weapon that we've got.
I always think it is, and I think it's always interesting that the top teams have always had this in their locker, having that. Don't play well, but they'll get a set piece where they'll get one of the defenders on the end of a corner or a free kick. And I mean, you look at the Liverpool team a few years ago, and Virgil van Dijk was scoring loads of goals, wasn't he? And that was from centre half, and that's what we were lacking last season. Our central defenders didn't get enough goals, which seems mad to say, doesn't it? But it's true. They need to weigh in with a proportion of them in tight matches, and it's a good point, really. That, and again, the work they've done on it was showed on Sunday. Now they've got to keep that consistency going forward against teams who will defend against us.
That's it. We need to make it a regular thing. I seem to remember looking at the end of last season. I can't remember exactly what I looked at, but I remember looking at some stats and working out that we should have, I think based on average percentages in the league or something, if we'd have hit average, we would have scored like eight more goals from set pieces than we actually did last season. Imagine what that would have done last season. Like 8 more goals if we'd done it in the games against like Leeds that we drew at home and things like that. Would have been comfortably in third place. So And that's the kind of moments that we need to be happening regularly this season, especially in tough games. You know, we're going to come up against lots of teams at home this season who are just going to have backs to the wall. They're not going to want to get out of their own half. They're just going to want to defend and hit us on the break. And we've got to find a way, like you said, Dexter, to break them down. And an easy way to do that is take the lead by scoring a set piece goal.
Yeah.
And then the game opens up.
Yeah.
And what we've got, you know, you've got a winger there in Gordon who takes people on the outside, and that will lead to more corners and will lead to free kicks. It's funny, I was talking to Andrew the day, the other son, and we were talking about the fact that we haven't really had a free kick on the edge of the box worthy of the name, have we? We haven't scored direct from a free kick, like, you know, the Trippier or whatever. For quite a while, so that's another area I think we need to weigh in with. It was funny because last night, because all Man City's players, they never actually got a free kick anywhere near the edge of our box, because you might have imagined that they would have had potential to curl one into the top corner. But it was the Sheffield United game was just a lovely afternoon at the end, wasn't it? I mean, the win 8-0 it's a freak of results, isn't it? It doesn't happen very often. But what it did do was it gave us 8 goals on a goal difference, which is fantastic. We had 8 different scorers, which gives them all the thought, well, I can score a goal in the Premier League. And our finishing was good, wasn't it? And it just the morale and the thing. I mean, from the Brentford game through the Milan game through that game, took us into last night. And that, as you said earlier, Dexter, about the psychological effect of beating Man City. Eddie Howe's done it for the first time. He never beaten before. So that is a massive boost. And we've got Burnley on Saturday. That's going to be interesting because they're a low place side, but they don't play the sort of defensive type game that you would expect.
They're not Sean Dyche Burnley anymore, are they?
No.
So they're very distant prospect. Well, we'll come on to the Burnley game just at the end, just before we wrap up the show. But we're gonna just move on to our main segment for today, and we thought we'd take a look, because this season has been a bit of a season of two halves, really. I think overall we've had 3 successive defeats before the international break. We've now followed that up after the international break with 2 Premier League wins, the League Cup win, and that hard-fought, maybe slightly fortuitous draw in the Champions League in the San Siro, but we'll absolutely take it. So it's turning into, an interesting season. There's been some good stuff, there's been some bad stuff. So what we're going to look at is some nice and nasty surprises so far. So we're going to take it in turns and just see where, things that we've been happy to see and things that we've maybe not been so happy to see. So, Dexter, do you want to start us off? Something.
Nicest surprise for me has just been seeing the youngsters coming through and getting opportunities like Miley, as well as the youngsters that were bought as well. I think it's if you look back 12 months ago, we had probably the oldest squad in the Premier League, or one of the oldest, and now we're starting to see that next generation of talent, and not just players through the academy, but we've bought really well in Gordon and Livramento, and seeing Livramento the other night was just added to that, really.
Yeah, that's a really good shout. I think it's funny, isn't it? Because you sort of, things happen quite quickly in a sense, but you don't feel like they're always happening quite quickly. But we're only 2 years out from the takeover, and all these players that we're now seeing, and really a lot of them in the last 12 months, really, aren't they? It's fantastic, and it is exciting the fact we've got Hall, Livramento in that squad. But you're right to highlight the fact that Gordon feels like an established Premier League pro, but actually I think this will only be his second full Premier League season, or maybe his 3rd full Premier League season, I think. So it's mad, really, like that he's still so young and he's looking so good.
Yeah, and I think my first one on the list was Anthony Gordon. It's not a surprise in a way, but it is a delight, really, to see him the way he's playing. And he started it off when he went to play for the England under-21s in the summer. and he was outstanding in that tournament. I thought, that's pretty good that he got the player of the tournament. And, you don't get that without being decent. And he looked the part. He's obviously, done a lot of training, and he's got. And I remember his interview at the end of last season when he said, I wasn't good enough for this team. I couldn't keep up with them, and I've got a lot of work to do. And I thought that was so refreshing to hear, wasn't it? It wasn't. And the way he's come back and his performances over the first part of this season have been absolutely brilliant. I mean, all the home games I've attended, he's been, against Liverpool, he was brilliant in that first half, particularly. He scored the goal, and he was running the Arnold absolutely ragged. And I think it was a bit of a shame Howe took him off, and I think Eddie Howe probably maybe in retrospect might have regretted that. But nonetheless, the way he came on Sunday, sorry, and then last night he came off the bench and immediately he was at it, and it was such a. And do you know what I really like?
Man of the match. He's basically having man of the match performances game after game.
Amazing. And do you know what I like about him now that I hated about him at Everton was he's not getting involved in stupid stuff. He's not. He's not Mr. Angry, storming about the place. He's actually this season. He's actually being a nuisance to the defenders, and his pace going outside. It's fantastic to see a winger
he relishes that, doesn't he? You can see that he relishes taking people on in a foot race. Like he wants to say, right, can you beat me? Because he knows how fast he is. There's not many who can keep up with him.
Definitely, and that goal, the first goal on Sunday, it was his tenacity to keep the ball in, which led to Sean Longstaff, and the way he played the ball back perfectly for Longstaff just to sweep it into the net. That was really, really good. So Anthony Gordon is as I say, it's not necessarily a big surprise, but it's just a real nice thing at the moment that we've got a player who's on top of his form and will still get better.
Yeah, it's a big surprise for me, Gordon. My wife thought he was an absolute toe rag when we signed him, and now he's our favourite player. So I've not seen her change her mind that quickly about anyone.
I think there's a few people like that, though, isn't there? There's quite a few people who've changed the tune over him, which is fair enough. I'll go with a nice one as well before we maybe do a round of nasty surprises. So for me, I think. Which one should I go for? Let's stick with the playing squad. So I think for me, Trippier as well, being back at peak form, has been again just a really great thing to see, because not that he was bad last season, and really he was one of our best players last season, but it did feel like he maybe wasn't quite at the high level towards the end of the season that we'd come to expect from him. But this season, I mean, we talk about Gordon, but for me, him and Gordon are up there as our two Player of the Year candidates so far, Player of the Season candidates so far. And to be fair, I mentioned this on Twitter the other day, but someone said Botman you could throw in there as well, and I do agree those three players have just been sensational. But for me, Trippier, it's what he brings as a captain. Like, it's not just his footballing ability, it's even little things like against Sheffield United when Botman scored. Have you seen the clip of the kind of the bottle being thrown at Anderson, and then Trippier's there, they're celebrating. What's Trippier doing? He's pushing the players away, getting them back up out of the way of the corner with the Sheffield United fans. He's being a leader all the time, and it's just that kind of, it's that sort of thing you can't buy. Like you either have that or you don't have that, and Trippier's just got that sort of stuff in abundance, and I'd just love to see it.
Yeah. On Trippier, we talked earlier about him being older, and I'm just wondering whether he does a Barry Venison and he could potentially move into that defensive midfield role that we keep talking about. Us needing.
He's intelligent enough, isn't he?
His passing's incredible, right? Like it's
I think with his level of fitness and things, so I think he could do. He's got another 2 or 3 years yet. I think I think it's like what we're seeing with Lascelles about the club. I mean, people wrote Lascelles, oh, he's going to go and he's going to go and he's not. But actually, I think it's his influence off the pitch as well, and it's quite clear. And when you saw the new players coming into the club, and Kieran Trippier was meeting them and sort of saying, "This is," when he met Tonali particularly, because he's sort of similar. So there was that sort of leadership as well, wasn't it, off the pitch? I just think we're just a united team. It comes across. You can just feel it and see it. So, yeah, I think there's a chance of that midfield thing. I don't think it'll be he would do it all the time, but yeah, you never know. I mean, as you say, he's capable and sort of sensible enough to do it. So, be interested to see how that goes.
Future manager, do you think?
You would like to think he might be around the club for a canny time, wouldn't you?
I was just about to say, actually, I wasn't thinking manager, but I was just going to ask you both. I was thinking, do you think he will stay on as a coach when his playing days are done? Because I would love to see that. I think.
It wouldn't surprise.
His influence around the club, he's just he's got a lot to bring, I think.
Yeah.
Let's do a round of nasty surprises then. Let's do a quick round of that, and then maybe finish with some nice ones as well. So we'll do a round of nasty one. Dexter,
my
nasty surprises this season?
Yeah, it's actually the fan base. You can't go on Twitter without either people trying to do Jedi mind tricks on you that. Sean Longstaff's the greatest player ever to play for Newcastle. And if you mention anything about, I don't think he's that great, you kind of, you're a Judas to the club. And then the flip side is, Sean Longstaff makes a mistake and say, he's terrible, get him over. It's
not like the Newcastle fan base to be bipolar, is it?
But it's kind of we've had 2 years of, pretty great times, and now it's almost like we're bored with that. How do we create crisis when there isn't one?
I've written that down as one of my things that before the Brentford game, I'd say, I don't know, the schizophrenic nature of our fans. Honestly, they're just ridiculous. I had a conversation with another lad on Twitter, Lee Johnson. I don't know if you've follow him at all, Dexter. But he's in the Gallowgate corner. He's in the stand a bit now. But I was chatting to him at half time last night, and we were talking about this. And he says some of these idiots who, and it's what you said. It's like the one that we're suddenly now going to win every game, and if we don't win every game, there's a huge interest in every game that we don't win.
To me, that is the trend that has just absolutely does my head in. It's like this expectation that we're going to win every single match. I mean, no one wins every single match.
Yeah.
Like, it's just no sporting team ever wins every single match. It just doesn't happen. So this meltdown that a section of our fans have every single time a game doesn't go to plan, we need to rip it all up. Like after the Brighton game, there was calls for Howe's head, and there was all. It's like, okay, we've had a bad run and Howe's made some mistakes. Let's talk about that.
Yeah.
But let's not overreact.
And I think this is the thing that I'm more concerned about than anything else, right? The idiots just don't follow them. But then you've got people like yourself, Ian, who I think are doing a really great job of having balanced, open, intelligent conversations where you talk about the problems. And you've got, what I call the fan police, who are coming out and completely gone mental at that. And then they're deciding what constitutes a fan.
Yeah.
So if you're not born within 5 miles of St. James's Park, you're not a fan. If you haven't got a season ticket, you're not a fan. If you say something negative about anybody, you're not a fan. So how did you get to decide what? So I think it's kind of. I think everybody just needs to focus on enjoying the ride.
Just enjoy it. Yeah, God, it's going to be fun.
Exactly.
This,
And I think the other thing about after the Brighton defeat, the media started to get into this as well, because they were putting headlines out. Is Eddie Howe under pressure? Is this? And that was just stoking a nonsense. And why does everything have to be played out in this way all the time, and they do it to other managers of other clubs. It's not just unique to us. A manager loses a couple of games, and whoa, that manager's under pressure, and and it's just it just does your head in. And I just think we just need to be more balanced. Thankfully, I think a lot of us are balanced, and I think. It's the minority and the volume, the ones who make the most noise about things. But if you can't have an argument with someone, and that's why I don't bother. I just think you've said what you've said, but I'm not arguing with you.
Well, you wouldn't be saying it in the pub, would you, if we're having the?
I was going to say, I think the lesson here is probably we should all shut our Twitter accounts down and just move away.
Yes, I quite like conversing with people who you can have a conversation with. Like I had Dexter out there in Australia and about other people around the country, isn't it? And I tell you one thing that really knocks me. No, it's not about Newcastle in particular, but what constitutes a big club and the number of arguments you see. Well, we're bigger than you, and it's. I think I've got a solution to that, right? So I live in Newcastle, New South Wales. So you would expect that you would see a lot of Newcastle shirts, right? Because there's a lot of, there's an affinity with the region. Probably see mine. My son's got one. Most of what you see are Arsenal, Man United, Liverpool, Barcelona, Juventus, right? Yeah.
So if we want to be a big club, you've got to have people around the world, I think, wearing your shirt, right? And it's like I think that this thing around whether we're big or not, like who cares?
Really, who cares? I don't care.
Outside of Newcastle, right? Like nobody thinks you're a big club, so like it's just really.
I don't get on with it. Yeah, I just know what that ground when it's full, and I know that we will have more in the ground when they extend it and all the rest. Yeah. I know what we are like as a fan base. I've been a part of it for 50 odd years, so I don't care that I'm not thought of as a big club because Man United have won X number of titles, and Liverpool fans are some of the worst ones when it comes to this this argument. But we're just football fans. We want to see the team win and enjoy it.
On that point, Gordon, because I've noticed just watching on TV, and it's always hard to tell, but the crowd does seem quieter, and it seems like we've lost that momentum that we had, and the feel good factor that we had when last season and the season before. It seems like seems a little bit like the fans have got a bit complacent in the stadium as well. Is that right?
I'm going to jump in there because I don't. Maybe it's a TV thing, Dexter. But one of my nice surprises this season, actually, having been at all the home games in the league this season, I didn't go to the cup game last night. Is actually I think the atmosphere has been better, and I think part of that is down to the standing area in the Strawberry Corner. Now I don't know if that's just because I'm next to it where I sit in the Gallowgate end. I don't know how it affects further around the stadium. If it's just this pocket of the ground that I'm right next to sounds louder more often, but I think there's definitely been a bit of an improvement with the safe standing area in the Strawberry Corner personally. But again, that doesn't always transmit across on TV, which
I watched the last 3 games of last season, the home games. It's home because I had done my leg, and I must admit the atmosphere doesn't come across particularly well. I mean, the Arsenal game, you heard it at the beginning, and then it went. Yeah. But there was still a lot of chanting, but it doesn't come across as loud as it actually is when you're in the stadium. And sometimes, I sometimes say you cannot hear the away fans at our end of the ground because they're down the other end. And actually, sometimes it's a bit unfair because the noise we're making so much, but they're actually making a noise as well. But you just it gets drowned out amongst the thing. So, are we quieter this season? Is that a bit more? No, I think I'm a little bit. I don't think there's that much difference. If I'm honest,
the atmosphere at the Liverpool game was incredible until the last 10 minutes, and then you could hear a pin drop. But
that did come across the Liverpool game.
Fair enough.
Torn of nasty surprises.
Let's move on from that one. I've got a nasty surprise, so let's stick with kind of fans and that sort of thing. I think the ticketing issues have been a really nasty surprise this season, and it's not just people moaning about queuing to get in, because I think that's partly down to the technology and people just getting used to scanning the phone, and I think that in time that won't be an issue. The problem is the ticketing system, the way that the points thing is working at the moment or not working. Like, I'm not against reforming that system personally. I think that probably needed to change. But then you've got this issue at away games where fans are being told to walk to the other end of the ground to have the ticket scanned because like the ticket doesn't scan when they get. That's totally unacceptable on any level. And I've even seen a case of one fan who went to Man City and literally didn't see the game because there was an error at the Man City end and the Newcastle end, and she didn't get in. And she goes to every away game basically, and she didn't get into the Man City game, and it's because of the ticketing system. And there's just massive issues with it that need sorting really quickly.
It is, Ian, and I've written that as my number one nasty surprise or nasty. I think it's something the club have got to get a hold of, and it's all those things you've talked about, but it's also affecting, like last night. I mean, I had you didn't go, Ian, did you? And I had your ticket to pass on, and there's a lad who went who hasn't got a supporter number. He was a season ticket holder years ago. He's not now. He didn't get a membership, so he doesn't have a number. So consequently, to do that, you've got to be able to nominate them on their website. You've got to be able to pick them off a list, but to get them on the list in the first place, they've got to have a number, which is, I thought it would just be, you just nominate a name, put them in, and that should be enough, because that's all you did before. If somebody went to the match, you went and you handed them your season ticket or your paper ticket and said, there you go in, no problem. And they're just making a mountain out of a molehill, and it costed me a lot of time. One, trying to ring the ticket office, and that is an issue in itself, because the waiting times are ridiculous, and quite often you get cut off. So you're wasting a lot of time and effort. And there's a lot of stress involved as well for people, because you're getting told that there'll be inspections at the turnstile with make sure the person named on the ticket is. And of course, a lot of that's a load of baloney, really. But
people don't want to take the risk.
People don't want to take the risk.
The punishment is you lose your ticket.
So I think what needs to be done, there's two main things. One, the ticket office needs to employ more staff. There needs to be more phone lines, more access. So the club need to get a hold of that. They also need to revamp the website, because it is absolutely terrible.
The system's not up to scratch, and that's not the problem.
And I know, again,
we should have done that first before they changed anything.
I know that we've gone very quickly into the situation where the demand now far outreaches the supply. But as a massive organisation, they need to, because it's causing a lot of distress. Not distress. That's not the word. No, but a lot of anger from people like the ones you've talked about, Ian, about people not getting in games, being told. I mean, being told to walk through the home fans to their ticket office is just balmy, isn't it? I mean, and I know the days of the hooliganism and all the rest, it's not like it was in the 70s and 80s, but nonetheless, there's still a bit of a fear factor there.
Yeah, it's not good. It's not good. Right. Have you got another nasty surprise, Dad, before we move on to the big round of nice ones to finish off with?
I think the biggest was the Liverpool last 10 minutes. That was a nasty surprise.
Let's not relive that.
We won't relive that. No.
So I had a nice surprise, which was Jim Begland hadn't commentated on a game down under. And then he commentated on the Sheffield United game, which was a nasty surprise. I just hate that bloke. I don't hate people, but for some reason,
I can't stand
at least, Dexter, at least he saw us hammer someone. He wouldn't have enjoyed that, because he likes to pick
this is how biased he is, right? Remember when we beat Spurs 6-1?
Yeah.
If you watch the commentary, right, that first 15, 20 minutes, every goal that we score, terrible defending. The next week, Liverpool play Spurs. First 15 minutes, score 3 goals. Exquisite, sublime, delicious. You're like, hang on a second.
Oh,
I think our goals were actually better than Liverpool's goals.
I can't stand them, and it used to be on 5 Live a lot. And I always remember there was a game we played Liverpool, and I think it was on Boxing Day, so it's about 20 odd years ago, and we lost, I think 4-2.
Yeah.
We were winning 2-1, and when Liverpool turned it round, which they inevitably did, oh man, it was just all over them, and how wonderful! And I thought, you're supposed to be the unbiased pundit sitting next to the commentator, and yet you're just a Liverpool fan. You might as well take somebody at the Cup and sit there next to the commentator.
Isn't that true for a lot of the media though? I mean, we're infiltrated with ex-Liverpool and Man United players, and it's the bias. They can't hold it back.
Yeah.
Anyway,
it was like what was it, Gary? I don't know. Was it Beglin that was commentating on Sunderland? Because when Gordon got kicked, and he said, "Oh, it's not no penalty there." I didn't. I wasn't.
Yeah, I'm thinking, it was him. Yeah,
penalty. He got. He tripped him.
Yeah.
I mean, it was a clear penalty, wasn't it? Right, let's finish with a quick round of nice surprises just to finish off. Mark in the comments has got a good Steve Bruce crawling out from under his rock a lot recently is a nasty surprise. That is true.
There was a classic Bruce line in that though. I think he was Simon Jordan said, "Oh, you've been accused of being a dinosaur." He says, "Yeah, well, dinosaurs ruled the earth for 300,000 years, didn't they?" A bit longer than that, Brucey.
Just a few years longer than that. My last quick nice surprise is one that I was only able to really write this week is the fact that the defence is solid again. So that's a really nice surprise because we were getting to the point where it was becoming a bit of an issue that we couldn't keep a clean sheet, and then all of a sudden, bang, we've got 4 clean sheets in a row, and what a way to turn it around.
Yeah, I mean, I've got that one as well. Yeah, I think that has been a really pleasant thing to see, and the fact that we're now back to a situation where we're not conceding 1 goal a game as a minimum. I mean, it'll fluctuate as the season goes, but it's reassuring again that we can defend, and that I think what was really really great to see from my perspective was the last 10 minutes against Sheffield United, when you could see the work rate going in to protect the goal. They didn't want to concede a goal, even though we were winning 8-0. They would just
really
want
that clean sheet.
to ensure that was protect that goal. And I think that spoke volumes to me to the way the club are.
Yeah. Dexter, final word from you. Have you got any more good ones?
The set pieces that we scored, but also prior to that, the Brentford game was just us getting crosses into the box, and we almost got a penalty from it. It just creates a lot of danger, and I think it adds another dimension to our game. And I'm not going to have a dig at Miggy here, but it does make a difference when you've got players who can get down to the byline and get crosses in, rather than us kind of putting these diagonal balls into the box. It's just a lot harder for defenders to defend when they're facing their own goal. So I think that's been a really nice surprise in the last few games. I think it's kind of added another dimension to how we play.
Definitely, yeah. Good
Absolutely.
one, nice one. Let's just wrap up. Obviously, we've got 2 big games coming up. Obviously, first of all, Burnley at home, and then return of Champions League football at St James's Park as well to Paris Saint-Germain next week. How are we feeling, firstly, about the Burnley game? Are you confident we're going to come away with 3 points?
I'll go first. Looking at the way that Burnley play, they like to play out from the back, and they're quite pretty when they do it, but they seem to lose ideas when they get into the final third. If we play our high press game like we did against Man City in the second half, we kind of get back to that. I think we could definitely win the game and win it quite comfortably.
Yeah, no, I agree with that analysis. I think, judging the way that Burnley do set up, I think it'll be a more open game than maybe people might have expect. As you say, the Sean Dyche days are long since gone.
It might suit
It's
us.
going to be quite a good game. The only downside that I've seen the weather forecast for Saturday, and it's I think it'll be played in with a lot of rain, which will sort of make it an interesting spectacle. But I would hope we would win. I think we've got enough. I think Eddie Howe's got a few decisions on who to play on Saturday. I think that'll be interesting to see who he puts
It's
in.
going to be interesting.
It's going to be a mix, I suspect, of the Sheffield United and last night. So yeah, we'll see. I think there'll be maybe one or two surprises on Saturday.
Yeah, and then looking ahead, just because it's such a big game, Paris Saint-Germain at St James's, we'll be there, Dad. Which is very, very exciting.
Yeah.
Dex, I assume you'll be up and watching that
Oh,
one.
yeah. It was pretty emotional, the Milan game, where the team lineup came on and the Champions League music was playing. I think that was the highlight of the game for me. It's like
I think Wednesday night the place will be absolutely unbelievable. And I think War Flags are doing a big load of new flags and things for Wednesday night. I think it'll be interesting to see what they are. But we talked about atmospheres earlier, but I think Wednesday night will be.
I've just got like hairs on the back of my neck standing up just talking about it. I think it's just going to be a historic moment for the club, right? That seeing that and the war flags and Champions League music playing and players coming out onto the pitch. It's going to be, I think there'll be quite a few tears in St James's Park.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah. I think it'll be special. It'll be a special night.
Be
whatever the results, I think it'll be a huge match.
I do think we can get a result as well. When it comes to it, I think we can. I think a draw to Paris Saint-Germain would not be a bad result. But let's see what we can do with the St James's behind us. Let's hope we can just give them a good game, really, and maybe impose ourselves a little bit more than we did against Milan, and just kind of take it to them and see what happens.
As you said earlier, Gordon as well. Eddie Howe, big psychological boost in beating Man City, and I think I kind of had that as one of my nasty surprises actually up until that game. Don't think kind of Howe's really kind of shown his best up against the elite managers he's been up against so far this season, and hopefully that kind of gives him the confidence to look. It's understandable, right? I think this is the challenge for Howe. It's a breakout season for him as well, right? He's kind of got a lot of people questioning him and.
Yeah, I was watching when I was in Milan when we were staying in Garda last week, and we had the Sky they had down in the hotel, so they had Italian obviously commentators and things. And one thing they did a preview of the all the Champions League clubs, so they went through every club in the competition, and when you looked at the players who are in this competition, you just think, wow, this is a level above even the Premier League. I mean, it was just so. For Eddie,
they do a big feature on Longstaff and Gordon.
I don't think of that. Yeah, by the end of the season, there will be though, Dexter. But I just thought Eddie Howe's got this. He's never managed, and he said something in his comedy. He said, "I just take it as another game," and I'm thinking,
he doesn't. And I think that's the thing. It'd be nice if he just said, you know what, I've dreamt of this moment, like my whole career, right? Because I think you should acknowledge that. And I know, like the way that he operates, that he's been like visualizing this moment. He'd be lying in bed visualizing that moment.
Yeah.
Can't wait.
Yeah.
Right. Thanks, guys. Really good show. Enjoyed it a lot. Thanks for listening and watching. All you people who are watching live on YouTube, thanks for listening. Please remember to subscribe to the podcast on Apple or Spotify or wherever you get your podcasts, and share it with other Newcastle fans as well, please, so we can grow the show. And we'll be back next week with another show, and hopefully, fingers crossed, 2 more Newcastle clean sheets and victories. Let's
Ian, can I just say before we wrap up, what an amazing job that you're doing with podcast. I'm absolutely loving it. It's great. Driving to work, on travel trips. And I just think it's great the way that you're providing a platform for sensible, friendly, interesting conversation about Newcastle. Well done,
Thanks,
mate.
Dexter. That's awesome. Yeah, thanks. And that's what I aim to do. Really, is just kind of, just enjoy talking about Newcastle in a level-headed way, really, and try not to be too high and low, even when things are really, really good or really, really bad. So, I really, really appreciate that, and thanks for joining us. Honestly, it's a pleasure to have you on. And have a good week, and we'll see you next week.
Next week, yeah. Thank
See
you,
you, folks.
Yeah, see ya.